Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2019 Kia Sorento, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the Curt T connector vehicle wiring harness. These Kia Sorentos are really versatile SUVs and people use them to do a little bit of everything. And that does include towing. And the wiring is going to allow you to do that safely. That's because it's going to provide our trailer with those necessary lighting functions to let other motorists know what our intentions are as we're going down the road. And another thing too, what a lot of people don't think about, this is also going to work with those light up accessories. So for example, some cargo carriers and tube steps, things like that, this will power those up as well. So one of the really nice things about this kit is the fact that it uses a module box. And what that module box is going to do is protect your Kia's factory wiring if a short or anything like that were to occur on the trailer side. And honestly, that's really important, at least to me, because with today's newer vehicles, the electronic systems can be really complicated, and you don't want to do anything to jeopardize that. Because of the module box, you're not going to have to worry about it. It does come with this nice rubber dust cap, and you can actually use that to wrap around your hitch and keep it stored like that. However, if you don't want it to hang down, you can also pick up multiple different types of brackets available here at eTrailer, which will allow you to kind of mount it like this to your hitch. So have a couple choices there on how you can mount it. So that dust cap is going to be nice and thick and really do a good job of protecting the terminals. But however, I do recommend, since this does live outside, to go a step further and every now and again just apply some dielectric grease to those terminals, and that'll really ensure that your connections will last a very long time. Now, a nice thing about this kit is that it's going to be able to work with Sorentos that do not have a factory tow package plug, but it can also work with Sorentos that do have a factory tow package plug. So whatever type of Sorento you have, it's going to work with it. Now, if you're unsure if you have a factory tow package plug, it's really easy to find out. Right here on the driver's side, just behind the tire, there's a little plastic panel. You can pop that down and look for two empty factory plugs. So underneath that panel, if you have two factory connections with nothing plugged into them, then you know your Sorento has a factory tow package. Now, as far as the installation goes, it's really not too bad. It's nothing really too difficult or confusing about it. However, it does just take a little bit of time to complete. But as long as you stay patient, you should have no problem getting it done at home, in your garage, or even in the driveway. To begin our install, we're going to be here at the back of our Sorento, and we're going to need to remove our tail lights. So we'll start by opening up our hatch. So if we look right here, we're going to have a little access panel we need to pop out. So you can just take a flathead screwdriver and kind of carefully just pry underneath it. Underneath that panel, we're going to have two 10mm nuts that we need to remove. And those are securing our tail light. So I grab my socket and pull those off. So now we can grab our tail light and work it out. So you may have to kind of wiggle it around a little bit to loosen everything up. But you're going to want to pull straight back. So sometimes what can happen is right here in this area, there's two little push pins, like little alignment pins that can kind of get hung up. And if that's the case, you can do a couple things. Take the palm of your hand, kind of hit the tail light like that to get it loose. Or if you need to, you can take a plastic trim tool or something like that and kind of help loosen it up by kind of just lightly prying under there. You don't want to put a ton of pressure on it because you don't want to risk cracking your tail light, but as long as you kind of work it and take it slow, it'll eventually pop out. Once you have our tail light out, here's those little pins I was talking about that sometimes get a little hung up, but once we have it removed, we're going to disconnect it. I have this one connector here. Just push down on the center of that tab and unplug it. So I'll set my tail light to the side and repeat the same process over on the other side of our Sorento. Now at this point we can grab our wiring, and over here on the driver's side we're going to take the T connector that has the yellow, red, brown, and white wires. This end is going to plug into our factory wiring there, so those will just clip together. And then what we're going to do is feed all of the remaining wires and our module box down to the underside of our Sorento. So I don't have a ton of room to work here, so I kind of like to do this one at a time. You may have to kind of finesse the module box in, but it will pass through. So once we have our wiring dropped onto the bottom side, we can take the other end of our T connector here, grab our tail light, and this end is simply just going to plug right back into the tail light. Simply reinstall our tail light the opposite way that we removed it. Now it's back on. Snug them down and reinstall our little panel here. Now before we go underneath our Sorento, eventually we're going to have to run some wiring over here to the passenger side taillight pocket. So now is a perfect time to kind of prepare for that. I'm going to use a pull wire. It's just a piece of tubing. You could also use a coat hanger or a heavy piece of wire or something like that. What we're going to do is just drop this down to the bottom side. That way eventually we can attach our wire to it. Leave a little bit up here. That way when our wire is attached, we can come up here, pull this up, and bring our wire where we need it to be. So now underneath of our Sorento, here on the driver's side, we have this little plastic panel that we're going to need to remove. That way we can work with our wires. We have two push pin style fasteners. Use a trim tool like this or a flat head screwdriver. I'm just going to pry underneath the head of them and work them out. And we can kind of grab our panel, pop it down, and set it off to the side. So what I went ahead and did was just secure our module box here and some of that extra wiring to this factory wiring. That'll keep it where we want it. And then I started to route our green wire and our 4-pole wiring. And I routed our 4-pole wiring just over here along our hitch. Just secured it using a zip tie and just wrapped the dust cover around our safety chain openings here to secure that. Now as far as the green wire, this is the wire that's going to run over to the passenger side tail light pocket. So I routed that up and over our bumper beam. It's a little tricky to see, but you can get your hand up there and route that wire over. It just runs through this opening here. You can see it here. Just secured it along the way. Some zip ties. Did the same thing over here, just up and over this bumper beam. And it drops down right here. So I dropped it down, and then I just secured the end of it to that pull wire. So now we can work on this white wire here coming out of the module box. Could have a pre-attached ring terminal, and this is going to need to get grounded. So we need to put it to a metal surface on the body of our vehicle. I think I'm going to choose right here. There's a pinch weld, nice and solid, and should provide us with a good ground. I'm going to secure it using the included self-tapping screw. So now back up top here on our passenger side, we can grab our pull wire, lift it up, and bring our wiring through. I'll go ahead and peel this tape off, and then we can get it plugged in. So this side is going to work just like the other side. One end will get plugged into that factory connector, and the other end will get plugged into the back of the tail light. So I went ahead and zip tied some of the extra slack in our green wire here to our factory harness. And now we can just go ahead and reinstall the tail light the opposite way that we removed it. Now back underneath our Sorento, we're going to have a black wire coming out of our module box. And what we're going to do is take a butt connector. I'm actually using heat shrink butt connectors. They offer just a little more protection against corrosion. And you can pick these up here at eTrailer, but the ones that do come included in the kit will work just fine. So you're going to slide that butt connector over the bare end of that black wire and crimp it down. And then we're able to grab our bundle of black power wire. I have the end of it here, one of the ends. And what we're going to do is strip that insulation back. We're going to take that in and plug it in to the other end of our butt connector. Slide in. We'll get that crimped down. Then I'll come back with the heat source and seal up the ends. So this is what our butt connector looks like after the ends have been sealed up. And from there, I went ahead and routed our main power wire up into the engine compartment. And this is the path that I took. This one up here, secured it, routed it over to here. And then I went up and over our subframe. So the wire kind of comes up through here in this location, runs on top of the subframe. And here's where it drops down. And when you do this, you want to be sure to avoid any hot moving parts, so keep that in mind. I continued along to our e-brake cable. And I followed it over here. And underneath this panel is where I continue to route it. Now, you don't have to, but if you want a little more room in this panel, there is a handful of 10mm nuts along the sides you can take off to give you a little more room. That being said, just followed these factory lines here. And from here, I ran it up into the engine compartment. Now, how I got it up there is the same as how we got our passenger side taillight wiring into that taillight pocket. From the engine compartment, I dropped down a pull wire down to here, taped our power wire to it, and then I was able to go back up top, pull on that pull wire, and feed it up there. So now underneath the hood, here's where that power wire came up, and what we're going to need to do is hook this up to a fuse holder, which will get connected to the positive battery terminal. So our power wire, you strip the insulation back, and take a butt connector and crimp it on. And the other end of the butt connector, we're going to take our included fuse holder, and put that in. And crimp it down. And the other end of our fuse holder, that's going to receive a ring terminal. Slide that on. And crimp it down. Now you want to make sure that you don't have a fuse installed in the holder. And what I'm going to do now is grab my heat source and seal up my butt connector ends. With our butt connector all sealed, what I'm going to do now is run this underneath this air inlet tube over to our positive battery terminal. So there's a cover here. We'll flip that open. And what I actually did is right here on this corner, I just cut out a little piece of plastic. That way our wire can run through here and not get pinched in the lid. There's going to be a 10mm nut that we will remove. Now some of these come all the way off. Others are not designed to come all the way off. So we'll see what this one does. And this one is not designed to come off easily. So you'll know that if you kind of hit a hard spot. So instead of forcing that off and potentially damaging anything, what we're going to do to get our ring terminal around it is simply just cut out an opening in that ring terminal. So we want to go just big enough to make it in there. These are kind of large, so what I like to do is kind of tighten them up a little bit. Something like that should work. It's going to slide underneath the nut there. And once we're holding it there, you can simply just tighten that nut back down. Once it's snug, you close up your cap, come back up to your fuse holder, and install the included fuse. Now that we have everything hooked up, it's a good idea to test your wiring to make sure it's functioning properly. So we'll use our left turn signal, our right turn signal, our brake lights, and our running lights. And now that we've verified everything is working, we can go ahead and reinstall our underbody panel. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Curt T connector vehicle wiring harness on our 2019 Kia Sorento.